What's a 90s 2000s trend that would baffle kids today? Story 1. Taking out the cigarette lighter in the car and plugging in a portable CD player with that corded cassette tape thing. Story 2. Be kind, rewind. On the same vein, going to rent a video and hoping they had a copy left. Not able to be on the phone and the internet at the same time. Internet time coming via CDs in the mail. Answer. Also the dynamics of physical copies of video games. Developers shipped games as is, no day one patches. If it sucked, it sucked. And then also not knowing what games are good. I remember going to Target and my first DS game was Kirby Canvas Curse, and it was recommended by an employee. Otherwise, I would have had no idea. You just had the picture on the front and a little blurb on the back. You maybe could do research early on the internet, but as a kid I wasn't really able to do that. Then you opened the game in the car and read the little manual in the case. Often had basics on controls and some lore, and then plopping it in and playing co-op or multiplayer with your friend. Story 3. Having to wait a week for photos to be processed and printed and only getting 10. Most of them unidentifiable. Excited to have that one good picture that's slightly blurry. Story 4. Riding to a friend's house to see if they could hang out. No? Okay. I'll start my 2-mile bike ride back home to find something else to do. Story 5. Downloading music off LimeWire to iTunes, running to Walmart while it downloads, buying blank CDs, and then burning them once it's downloaded. Then trying to think of a cool name for your new CD. Answer. I spent 3 days downloading the movie 300 while it was still in theaters. Burned it to a DVD, made some Jiffy Pop. I had a Code Red Mountain Dew also. Popped in my freshly burned DVD on my Friday night, and I remember thinking how awesome it was that I was about to watch a movie that was playing at the theater down the street. The movie started and I remembered thinking that it looked kind of cheap for a Hollywood movie. Then the first big donged guy walked onto the screen, followed by another, and then another, and then another. I then realized I had spent 3 days downloading gay adult content. I made popcorn for gay adult content. I stopped at the store to get a Code Red Mountain Dew for gay adult content. At least I had won a free mountain under the cap. Edit. God damn it, Reddit. About 600 more upvotes and my highest rated comment on Reddit will be about me watching gay adult content. Story 6. Having a big box TV, landlines, prank calling, and calling after 9 p.m. for free minutes. The best one MTV when it played nothing but music videos. Answer. My brother told me that in the 90s he was at a sleepover and he and his friends were prank calling people badly. So, they ended up calling a friend's house, and the friend's dad picked up, and they all screamed, "Fudge you," and hung up. They were laughing until the phone rang seconds later and heard, "Which one of you was it from downstairs?" And they all pretended to be asleep when one of the parents came upstairs to the bedroom. Apparently, the dad they said fudge you to had this new thing the kids never heard of called caller-eyed. Story 7. Playing literally one video game for the entire summer. No online walkthroughs. If you wanted a hint, you needed to buy a paper guidebook, hope your friend knew the tricks, or call a 900 number for help. My mom had to block 900 numbers because I racked up a huge bill trying to beat a King's Quest game TTLMFAO. Answer. Those darn point-and-click games where the puzzle only made sense if you were exactly the person who thought it up. You've got to go to the library and get the book so you can stand on it to reach the pillow on the top shelf of the closet because the couch is too uncomfortable to lay down on otherwise. Once you get the pillow, you can lie on the couch and turn on the TV to see the news broadcast that mentions the alien invasion and moves the story along. Otherwise, the game is at a dead stop, and you'll die when the aliens attack unexpectedly. Luckily, those were mostly mid-90s for me, so there were playthroughs to most of them online. Story 8. Going outside and staying outside with no contact. As a teen in the 90s, we roamed for days, just told our parents we were staying at whoever's house. Staying in the house was lame. Immediately after school, we were gone. Story 9. 1. Sober adults dancing in unison to the Macarena song. 2. Steve 428 slaps Ghost Rider around a bit with a large trout. Story 10. At least for the 90s, a parent yelling, "You need to get off the computer. I need to make a call." Or the opposite. "You need to get off the phone. I need to use the dial-up." Full disclosure, we didn't get dedicated broadband until Fios was available. Story 11. Explaining why we had to blow into game cartridges to make them work would sound like ancient magic to kids today. Story 12. Printing out directions and learning MapQuest did not have updates to change roads or intersections. Story 13. Going and knocking on the door of a friend's house to see if they were available to come out and play. Answer. My 6-year-old literally did this today. He begged me to walk over to the neighbor's house around the corner and ask if they wanted to come play at our house. Why don't I just text their mom? And I interrupted my wife. Shh, just let this happen. Last thing he said before he left. How long can I stay at their house before we have to come back here? Doesn't matter to me, kid, as long as they can stand you. And off he trotted out into the searing 100F afternoon to see if the neighbor kids wanted to play. It was glorious. Story 14. Being outside from 009.00 to 23.00. Eating food wherever in the neighborhood. Your parents had no idea where we were until we returned. Story 15. Not a trend, but calling your friend's house in the 90s and being comfortable talking with whomever answered the phone would be wild to most kids today. I'd chat with my friend's parents for a minute, ask how their day was, no big deal. I have kids that work for me that are in their 20s and can't make a fudge phone call to save their life. Story 16. Waiting for a commercial to come on so you could go pee and running back as fast as possible when your family members yells it's back on. Story 17. Don't use my cell for too long. I don't have a lot of minutes left. LOL. Not really a trend, but the hard knocks of life. Story 18. Recording songs off the radio and getting mad at the radio people for yapping. Let the song finish. Then again, looking back now, I think that was a tactic to sabotage the whole practice. Story 19. Leaving a note in the kitchen telling your parents that you left. Then, since they have no way of getting a hold of you, and you just waited till you got home to see if you were in trouble or not. Story 20. If you missed a new episode of a TV show, you missed it. Your only chance to see it again is when it became a rerun the next season. There was always a showtime that showed old episodes where new ones had the one during the season. Like The Simpsons aired new episodes on Sundays and had many airtimes during the week showing old episodes. You waited until it got added to the rotation. This changed in the 00s when entire seasons were released on DVD box sets. You could now watch without having to wait for it in the rotation. Story 21. Just going out roaming without your parents knowing where you were, what you were doing, and with no way to contact you. My brother and I once rode our motorbikes down to the beach at like 11 years old, stole a boat, got our bikes across the other side of the estuary, and spent the day riding around in the sand dunes. Went home when it started getting dark, covered in cuts and scrapes. Not a word was said about what we'd been up to. Nowadays, I have to physically pick my 5-year-old from her class, not the school gate. The teacher needs to see I've picked her up. At her age, I was just expected to get myself to from school. Answer. Same era. A group of mates and I nicked a stopwatch from PE class and used to do time trials riding our push bikes down this insanely steep gravel road. We measure the distance out and used SDT to find who was fastest. No helmets, no shirts. Bought machetes from the army disposal store and used to bushwhack through the forest, build forts, and make glove guns from pieces of polypipe that would shoot hard green berries. Play capture the flag, dam the creeks, fish, and make fires to cook what we caught. Drive through flooding river causeways on bicycles, find swimming holes with rope, swings. Ride 5 miles to go swimming at the beach. Our parents never knew where we were or what we doing. Just be home when the streetlights come on. Very good time to have grown up. Story 22. It reached into early 90s, but my young daughter always has tough time believing that we carried lucky rabbit's feet on keychains backpacks at a sea. No way today would kids collect animal parts. Story 23. Trapper keepers confuse me now, and I literally scream to high heaven to get my mom to buy me the TMNT one. For those who are unaware, a trapper keeper is a binder. Yes, us 90s kids were judging coolness by the kind of binder we had. Answer: the innovation of the trapper keeper was that it had a zipper to trap and keep all of the contents inside. In 7th or 8th grade, I had a very caring algebra teacher who saw that I was simply unable to keep my school bag organized. I was just stuffing all of my papers into the bag, among all the books and whatnot. Or I'd put them into folders and binders, but they'd fall out and get all jumbled up. And then I could never find my assignments. Or they wouldn't make it home. So one day after class, Mrs. Butler gave me a trapper keeper. So now, when I put my assignments into the binder, I could zip it closed and the papers wouldn't scatter all over my backpack. I never forgot that simple kindness, but I never did really become organized in any meaningful way. Story 24. Seeing a private picture's body was a community affair. All the homies shared the same magazines and VHS tapes could get a hold of. So you all knew exactly what you all had watched. No secret alternative tastes. Story 25. That stupid trend from the early 2000s where kids would wear a visor hat upside down, cocked 90 degrees. Story 26. Having to rush back to the couch with cereal in bowl with jug of milk in hand because your Saturday morning cartoons came back from commercial break faster than expected. Story 27. So many. A world with no internet and having to actually socialize landline phones. When you had internet, it was dial-up, so you couldn't be on your phone and internet at the same time. Games that didn't save watching what you said because there was no anonymity. Story 28. Metrosexual. We were so afraid of being gay that we had to invent a word that meant a man who grooms himself regularly, but don't worry, he isn't gay. The 2000s were a strange time. Story 29. Knowing how to troubleshoot a computer or install a software may be shocking, but I've seen lots of young people not knowing anything about computers, as when I was at their age, I was very knowledgeable in this field, which made me today an IT engineer. These kids ironically dream of working in IT in the future. Well, I have bad news for them. Doom scrolling isn't same as working in IT. Story 30. Calling a number to find out what the time was if you had to set the time on something digital after a blackout. Story 31. Chain emails. OMG. I'd be so embarrassed to do that today. I used to fill out these long about me QA thinking people were interested in reading my 50 answered. Story 32. Waiting 2 to 3 weeks for a package to get delivered after you mail in your order slip. Knowing you were about to get a phone call by the sound the computer made. IMEWire giving your computer digital aids. Story 33. Toys like these still existed. Nobody would play with this these days, where genuine joy and silliness is frowned upon as cringe. Come to think of it, any genuine emotion is cringe these days. Everything has to be buried under a veneer of ineffectiveness and smothered under a thick layer of irony, lest one be caught having fun, or anything else. Story 34. When swing music dancing went from non-existent to full-blown movement from 1996-1998 and then was gone in a flash. Story 35. Watching scrambled adult content on the high channels. changing the TV to channel 03 for gaming, burning CDs at Tech 4 wax, leaving the house at 8 a.m. with the only rule being be back for dinner at 10 years old, or younger, 20 hours a month, internet plans, busy signals waiting to get on the internet, not being able to use the telephone and access the internet at the same time, multiple formats of DVD, RR, and CDRWs, renting video games from local video store, Beanie Baby Mania, 137 SP34K. Story 36. CFAX and teletext. I work with someone that is 25, and she has no recollection of this amazing service that was like a precursor to the internet, made available via television broadcast in the UK. Story 37. Making plans and then showing up. I think about it sometimes when I'm meeting with a friend and texting before I leave the house, texting when I get there, changing plans, texting the new location, texting my ETA, and on and on. We used to just go, yeah, let's meet here at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, and just assumed it would happen. Story 38. Buying magazines. My go-to was Smash Hits, so I could read the lyrics to the latest E17 or Backstreet Boys songs and cut out the posters. Story 39. Not just having a landline, but sharing a landline. Everyone in the house had the same number. If you called, anyone in the house might pick up. If you were calling a girl, you had to be prepared to negotiate access with ESL grandmas, suspicious fathers, and/or hostile brothers. But families were kind of understandable. Where it got really weird was when you had adult roommates. Suddenly you're the social secretary for your popular womanizing roommate, trying to explain that you don't know where your other roommate is to a very angry woman, girlfriend, mother, boss, and ducking calls from that collection agency. And you'd have to collaborate on the voicemail message. Yes, only one voicemail answering machine for the entire household too. We used to do elaborate and hilarious messages every 2 weeks, sometimes with running jokes. It was a wild and crazy time that I don't really miss. Story 40. People are just naming things from the 90s. These wouldn't baffle kids now. A baffling 90s trend would be that time period where everyone looked like they were heroin addicts and we considered it the hottest thing on earth. Story 41. The teacher would have pages, entire books, filled with clear plastic slides with 30 or 40 lines of text. And she'd use this projector to put the text on a wall, and every student was expected to copy it verbatim. Just hours of copying these slides for learning. Story 42. Using dial-up to connect to the internet. Kids today would turn on computer and assume it's just connected automatically to the internet instead of manually logging on and off. Story 43. Your hobbies weren't hustling. I just collected Pokemon cards. For fun. I spent hours making flash animations. For fun. Comics. Fun. Video games. Fun. I feel like even older, maybe especially, Gen Z is all about using your spare time to try and make money. And not smartly. It's all about speculator markets. Story 44. Not trend hopping to different subcultures, styles like TikTok trends do constantly. You'd be called a poser and lose your credibility. We put ourselves in boxes and found our own individuality within said boxes. Story 45. 69, so you could find out the phone number that just called you. No, we didn't all have caller ID. Yes, it costs money. Yes, they use 69. Story 46. Download adult content on Kazaa and have only slightest guess at what it will be, because all you have to go on is a description, so you have to self-care to it even if it sucks, because it took 8 hours to download. Story 47. Looking your teacher dead in the eyes as you typed out a long, flawless message in your hoodie pocket using T9. Story 48. Being in front of the TV on Thursday nights to watch Living Single, Martin, New York Undercover. If you missed it, Then you were out of the lunch table conversation the next day in middle school. Story 49. Having to introduce yourself to your friend's parents when you call their landline phone. Even worse, a girl's parents. Bad time for your voice to crack. Story 50. Peeling the little blue plastic wafer out of a soda bottle lid, chewing the inside until you could tear it, and then methodically stretching the plastic until you got a bracelet. Or maybe that was just my school? Story 51. Pagers LOL. Interacting with one another in real life on a regular basis. Unfortunately, COVID put the children in school in front of a computer when really that was probably the last thing they needed if it weren't the only way to attend school. Story 52. Calling cards. I had an ATT calling card that I used to make long-distance phone calls while traveling. Story 53. Not a trend, but dial-up internet. I remember in 2008, I downloaded WoW Burning Crusade. 30-ish gigabytes took 2 solid days to download. I woke up on the 3rd day to see it failed. 3 days later, and I was playing. Now I can download 30 gigabytes in roughly 10 minutes. Story 54. Waiting for songs to come on the radio so you could record them on a cassette tape, and getting mad if the DJ talked over the intro. Kids today will never know the struggle of timing it perfectly and still ending up with the DJ's voice at the start. Story 55. The dark ages of cell phones, waiting after 9-10 p.m. or the weekends, depending on the provider, to get free minutes. Story 56. Get off the internet. I need to make a phone call. And waiting till after 6 or 7 p.m. to use your cell phone for the free minutes. Story 57. Hauling your PC tower and monitor over to your neighbor for LAN parties. Or, what I recently heard, a 3D monitor. Story 58. When you're broke and miss your chance to see a really good movie in theaters and now have to wait 6 to 12 months for it to come out on DVD. Story 59. I still remember when DVDs first took off in the early 2000s. They were all warning about piracy and how it was a federal crime. Story 60. You enter the restaurant and are greeted by the hostess who says, "Smoking section or not?" The trend being smoking bans in restaurants. Story 61. Collecting Beanie Babies. Slamming a cardboard circle with a plastic circle. Pogs one-handed texting below the desk without looking at what you're typing on the screen. Listening to music on headphones at the store while holding the CD in your hand. Babysitting the neighbor's kid as a 12-year-old. Story 62. Not showing your genitals to complete strangers as a societal standard or catching a charge for doing it. LOL. Story 63. Friday nights with Pizza Blockbuster, then gaming all night. A binder to store CDs, keep them in a car. Needing silence to record a song for your ringtone. LOL. Story 64. Badger, 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 mushroom, mushroom on eBay's World. Story 65. Google Maps was a huge book sitting in your glove box. If you didn't know the way, you had to literally chart it on that thing and then try to follow it. Or just memorize the whole thing. Story 66. Keeping paper or laminated maps in the little plastic bins in the doors near the driver's and passenger's feet. Story 67. Having to memorize your friends' landline numbers. And if their mom picked up, you'd instantly forget why you called. Story 68. Having to run to the bathroom kitchendo chores during a commercial break and having a sibling yell its back on so you can make it back in time. Additionally, knowing what time shows were premiering so you knew to do your chores before then so you could watch. Story 69. The deliberately exposed thong trend where women would wear low-rise jeans with crop tops, then hike the sides of their thongs up. Story 70. Renting a few movies to watch over the weekend on Friday nights. Or rewinding the VHS before giving it back. Story 71. Going out to party all night long at clubs and raves. No CCTV or mass surveillance, like there is everywhere now. In the UK, the massive culture washed by the UK government laws destroyed the nightlife here. Story 72. I'd have to say memorizing phone numbers. By 10 years old, I must have had 24 numbers in my head. Some I can still remember. That, or texting on a Nokia. I tried to explain the buttons to my summer campers once, and they were so confused and thought I was some kind of witch for knowing how to text faster than they could on a modern touchscreen phone. Story 73. I just showed a pic of Janko jeans to my nieces and nephews, a mix of jeans and alpha, and they were bewildered. Story 74. Hope. The trend of the Earth repairing itself. After the worldwide ban on CFCs, we had to wait a decade to find out if we would still have a planet capable of supporting life. The hole in the ozone started repairing itself, and we had proof that we weren't too late to save ourselves. Story 75. Men and women used to pull down each other's pants for a laugh, sometimes in public. Saw a story not too long ago where a 9th grader was expelled and not allowed to attend any school in the county. Think the most I saw was a day of in-school suspension. Very suspect activity in hindsight. But there was a couple years in the late 90s, early 2000s that it was an epidemic. Story 76. They'd probably be surprised to learn that their parents and people of a similar age were super into Pokemon games and trading cards. When I was growing up, my parents were convinced the whole Pokemon thing was a fad, but it's been almost 30 years and the franchise is still going strong. Maybe not 90s Pokemania strong, but strong enough to still be a huge moneymaker for Nintendo. Story 77. Printing out MapQuest instructions. Splurging on the 17 monitor instead of the standard 15-1. Dancing baby. Whipping the llama's jerk. Story 78. Zubaz pants. Pantsing each other. Sagging your short spans. Wearing a small skate shirt with sagging dickies. Pants shorts. This style is seen in the music video, The Rock Show by Blink. 182. Having a long, low-hanging belt. Puka, shell necklaces, frosted tips. Story 79. No offense, people, but I think kids can understand that older technology was not as powerful or that music and texting were charged differently. It's the finer things that are baffling. Just the other day, I taught a young co-worker about the difference between save and save as Story 80. For women, ultra-thin eyebrows with razor-cut, very short bangs. Also those platform sneakers that were like 4 high. I guess we needed the extra height because of the wide legs of our pants, either bell-bottom jeans or baggy warm-up pants. With a tiny t-shirt, of course. Story 81. Music CD cassette commercials like Cool Rock and Now. That's what I call music. You could learn the name of a song because it was in yellow as it came across the screen. It's How I Know. Krista Berg sang The Lady in Red. Story 82. TLC, the Learning Channel, when it was like a no-frills version of the Discovery Channel. Came standard on cable, and you paid extra for Discovery. But you still got to learn about Egyptian pharaohs, cave murals, origins of the human species, aliens, and other cool shit. Then it caught the reality virus and IDK. It's dead now, maybe? Story 83. Wearing a single earring on your left ear for dudes. Hanging out in the mall but breaking your posse into groups of 3, with each group 6 feet apart so they don't break you up for gang activity. Mall studio pics with the team, usually wearing matching outfits. Hanging out at malls in general. Sticker bombing the bus. The JanSport backpack all tagged up with whiteout markers. Story 84. Some 80s to mid-90s stuff, using a modem and a terminal program to dial into your favorite BBS to chat in a MUC or play some Legend of the Red Dragon knockoff. Or how about downloading the latest Fidonet Minet, whatever net message headers, with a so-called newsreader program, to then hang up, mark the subject lines that catch your interest, then dial up again to download the messages. Then hang up. Read the messages, type your replies, dial up, upload your replies, repeat, all in use, in pure text mode. The things that per-minute rates did to us. Story 85. Marbles, Beyblades, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon as an actual playing card game, Tamagotchi, Hawaiian shirts, really long hair for boys, Game Boy, long sleeve under short sleeve shirts, MSN Windows Live. Story 86. I played the thong song for my teenage daughter and cousins. They couldn't believe it was a real song and really popular. Story 87. Calling a girlfriend's house line and only letting it ring once as a form of code that only you two understand. Story 88. Those little portable music players that you could put different song cartridges in. They only played a minute or two of the song. Can't remember what it was called. Story 89. I still have fond memories of running around Blockbuster figuring out which movies, VHS, and video games, N64 cartridges I wanted to rent. Story 90. Playing with rare Pokemon cards as soon as you got them from a pack. Putting them in a binder, yes, but taking them out and not worrying about scuffing them up a bit. Story 91. VCR recording aside and pre-TiVo days, so early 90s, you had one shot to watch your show. That was it. You miss it, you missed it. There was no YouTube, Hulu, or at times recordings to watch. Then TiVo and similar absolutely broke our minds. But pre-TiVo, and even setting up the VCR recording, appointment viewing was literal, and you had to rush home to watch that show. Story 92. Flannel. So much flannel. I remember being a teenager in the 90s and owning at least a dozen flannel shirts. Story 93. Purity rings. Why was this a thing? No texting. Or having to hit the button 3 times to get to the last letter to make a word when texting did come out. Film cameras and have to wait for development from a store. Story 94. TBH LimeWire mixtapes burned onto stacks of blank CDs, and MySpace Top 8 drama were a whole scene. Kids now would never understand waiting minutes for a single JPEG to load. Story 95. The sheer size, weight, and quality of rear projection big screen square jerk TVs. Plus expensive replacement bulbs or failing DLP parts. Story 96. Ever want to confuse TF out of a teenager? Say I used to have this on a burnt CD about any random song. I spent a solid 20 minutes explaining what that statement meant. Story 97. Scooters. The non-electric kind. They were so big. Bikes? Nah, that's for boomers. Scooters were where it was at. Story 98. Not a trend, but something we just had to do growing up in a small town in the late 90s when most of us didn't have cell phones. You would drive circles around town on Friday night until you saw someone you knew, stop and chat to figure out where the party was. Sometimes you just go park at 7-Eleven and wait for someone to see you there and stop in. Story 99. Looking at the maps for routes and printing a copy with a highlighted route and sitting next to Dad so I can tell him where to go. Story 100. Not a trend, but 4.3 ratio television sets that were large and weighed a ton. There's a reason we call them flat screens today.